Ships and planes often go missing in the Bermuda Triangle and no one can find them. But some people manage to get out of this creepy zone and tell about what happened there. So did the hero of this episode. This is Infinity. And today you'll find out what happened to him and what he told when he returned from the Bermuda Triangle. Bruce Gernon is the name of the man who managed to get out of the Bermuda Triangle after incredibly strange things started happening to him. Moreover, it's believed that Bruce is the only one to be able to do it in general. Bruce worked as a pilot. In December 1970, he flew out of the Bahamas and set a course for Miami Beach through the Bermuda Triangle. It was the most ordinary flight that should have gone without problems. But shortly after Bruce gained altitude, strange things began to happen. Gernon saw an unusual semicircular shaped cloud. As the pilot recounted, at first the cloud was small, but when he flew up to it and was in the cloud itself, it increased dramatically in size. At the same time, it suddenly went dark. The pilot's eyes were illuminated only by flashes, which began to shine brightly right in front of his eyes. The farther Bruce flew, the more the flashes blinded him. The pilot was really frightened and decided to change course. He turned the plane around and flew back. It turned out to be the right decision. Having turned the plane, Gernon saw something like a gap. The blue sky was visible through the formed tunnel. The pilot didn't hesitate to direct the plane into the tunnel, which had already begun to close. Fortunately, Gernon managed to fly through it before it closed completely. After a while, Bruce contacted the dispatchers who said they couldn't see him on radar. Only after all the haze, fog, and clouds cleared did the aircraft instruments start working, and the dispatchers determined Gernon's location. When it became clear where the pilot was flying, everybody was shocked. It turns out that the plane almost reached its destination, although about 45 minutes had passed from the moment of takeoff. The flight itself should have lasted no less than an hour and a half. As Bruce himself suggested, the Bermuda Triangle, from which he miraculously managed to get away, was to blame. The pilot believed that if he hadn't managed to get out of the tunnel, his plane would have never been found. In the pilot's opinion, the Bermuda Triangle was not just swallowing planes and ships, but was a time-space phenomenon. The pilot believed that the triangle helped him to make a time leap. According to him, he traveled 100 kilometers literally in 10 seconds, cutting through time and space. Despite Bruce Gernon's interesting story, his explanation of the whole situation sounds kind of strange, doesn't it? It's hard enough to believe in tunnels, gaps, and flickering flashes, but what if the pilot was right and his whole story was authentic? After all, he did manage to get the plane out of the Bermuda Triangle when things started to get weird there. But many other pilots and ship captains were less fortunate, and the Bermuda Triangle took them forever. Stay tuned for the most mystical disappearances of ships, planes, and crews in the Bermuda Triangle that will surprise you. The mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle began to be actively discussed only in the middle of the last century, but mystical disappearances have occurred in this region of the Atlantic before. The disappearance of the Carroll A. Deering crew is one of the most famous and mysterious in this regard. No, it's not the name of the ship's captain, but the name of the American five-masted commercial schooner. The ship made its last voyage in January 1921. Carroll A. Deering and its crew were last seen near the floating lighthouse of Cape Lookout off South Carolina. 2 days after that, the vessel was found stranded off North Carolina, but there was no crew on board. In all other respects, it seemed as if the crew were hiding somewhere on the ship. Dinner was being prepared in the galley and the sails were up. The crew was never found. To this day, it's still unclear where everyone had gone and how exactly the ship was stranded. There have been many theories, but many are sure that it was the Bermuda Triangle that took the sailors with it. A little earlier, another mysterious disappearance occurred. The American ship USS Cyclops, used as a dry cargo ship, sailed on its last voyage in March 1918. More than 300 people were aboard. More than 10,000 tons of ore were carried on that voyage, but none of it was found. USS Cyclops seemed to have trickled away. No alarm signals were sent by the crew. The ship seemed to have sunk into the earth, or rather into the water. But in such a case, there must have been some wreckage, bodies, or something else. But no. A thorough search yielded no results. The USS Cyclops was never found. During the search, there were various theories about what happened, but none of them could adequately explain the disappearance of a large ship with a lot of cargo and 300 passengers. To me, there's only one explanation. The USS Cyclops became a victim of the Bermuda Triangle, which will never bring the ship back. The disappearance of the USS Cyclops, by the way, is recognized as the largest in the history of the Bermuda Triangle. Lockheed R-7V1. Let's get back to planes. If Bruce Gernon's aircraft managed to get out of the mystical zone, then Lockheed R-7V1 remained somewhere in the Bermuda Triangle forever. The large airliner carrying 42 people from the US to Morocco was considered something of a Titanic for early 20th century ships at the time. The airliner was much better protected than other planes and was very reliable. On October 30th, 1954, the plane left the United States. Shortly before midnight, the pilots made contact for the last time. At that time, they were already in the Bermuda Triangle area. They did not contact again and the plane disappeared. Ships and airplanes were sent to search for the missing plane. They sought the area where the airliner could have disappeared around the clock but found nothing. No wreckage, no belongings, and no bodies. In general, not a single clue. Avro Tudor 4 Star Tiger. Avro Tudor 4 Star Tiger was another aircraft unlucky enough to be in the Bermuda Triangle. On January 30th, 1948, the aircraft flew from Santa Maria in the Azores to Bermuda. Before takeoff, it was noted that the plane had problems with the heater as well as the compass, but the pilots decided to fly carefully at low altitude to avoid wind gusts. In addition, the plane was flying behind the Lancaster, another aircraft that was transmitting weather information. But this tactic didn't work out. At some point, communication with the plane was lost. The Lancaster landed successfully at its destination, but Star Tiger was never found. 25 passengers and 6 crew members were reported missing, and the incident was put down to the Bermuda Triangle. What's going on in the Bermuda Triangle in the first place? Why do planes and ships go missing there so often? Is there any way to explain it? Yes. And there are some interesting alternative and exotic theories about it, which I'll tell you at the end of the episode. According to one of the most daring hypotheses, all the accidents that happen in the Bermuda Triangle are the fault of a comet. Proponents of this theory believe that about 11,000 years ago, a comet fell into the very spot where the Bermuda Triangle is now located. This celestial body may have had special electromagnetic properties that affect the operation of navigational equipment and engines. Hence, all of these malfunctions in the electronics of ships. An even more daring and exotic theory is that the Bermuda Triangle is stacked with all kinds of portals. In fact, one of them was told by Bruce Gernon, the main hero of this episode. As you remember, the portal was temporary. By flying through it, Bruce reduced the flight time by about half. Proponents of the portals theory believe that there are space-time distortions in the Bermuda Triangle. In this part of the ocean, time can go differently, and space can be connected with parallel worlds. Finally, another alternative theory. Probably it's one of the most unusual and exotic theories about the Bermuda Triangle. Its supporters believe that the United States Navy's Atlantic Undersea Test and Evaluation Center is involved in the disappearances. According to supporters of this theory, this center is engaged in secret tests of submarines, weapons, and sonar. Tests are conducted in the area of the Bermuda Triangle. In this case, the disappearances of planes and ships can be put down to the fact that their passengers and crew members are simply witnesses who need to be eliminated so they don't blab anything. Something in the style of Hollywood movies, right? But why not? After all, history is replete with cases when witnesses have been disposed of in a heartbeat. That's all, guys. What do you think is causing the disappearances of the Bermuda Triangle? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you later.